Let's please give a big warm welcome to Dan Gingiss.
All right, hello again, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me here. This is going to be a little bit of a work session. We're going to take what we just learned. I'm hoping most, if not all of you, were in the keynote. Otherwise, I'll give you a real fast review, but we're going to take what we learned in the keynote and start implementing it right now for your events so that you can take this back to your organizations, you can take it back to work, and you can do something similar with your teammates. Sound good? All right, I am going to ask at some point, we're going to try to break up into groups because there will be some group activity. I'm looking, if a perfect scenario would be about 10 different groups in this room. So if you're sitting on the edge or not near someone, you may have to turn around or you may have to get up and go sit near somebody just so that we can get these groups working a little bit. I also try to leave time for questions at the end, and if we run out of time, I'm more than happy to spend time in the hallway or what have you answering questions. Also, because my book was mentioned, I am giving away my book in the vendor hall. Happy to sign it for you, so please come by afterwards and grab a copy. All right, so we learned about how to get people talking more positively about your brand. We learned the WISE methodology. Little secret hint, there's an extra letter when you read the book and when my keynote slot is a little bit longer than 30 minutes. And that is to be responsive. And so we have witty, which again, as a reminder, is not being a stand-up comedian. It's about being clever, using language to your advantage every time you communicate, and refusing to be boring. Immersive is about appealing to people's one of the 5 senses or their emotions and creating experiences that people feel in their bones. Shareable is about creating experiences that cannot help themselves. They are going to pull out their phone and record it for posterity. You don't have to ask them, they just do it. Extraordinary is about taking the ordinary and making it just a little bit extra, just giving it a little bit of a bump so that it stands out from everybody. And finally, responsive is what happens when you are wise. When you're wise and you create remarkable experiences, people start talking about you, especially in social media. And responsive is about being part of that conversation and making sure that you're engaged with people who are saying nice things about you. For many, many years, customers and attendees didn't have a way to engage with the brands or the organizations that they liked. Then social media came around, and now we can all talk to brands. And the question is whether they're talking back. And I don't know about you, but I've posted about a brand, and they get back to me. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel like I'm their #1 customer.
Number 4. There you got it.
So that's WISER. And what I'm going to very, very quickly do is walk through the 5 letters, but instead of explaining them all over again, and instead of giving you examples like I did in the keynote, I'm going to show you how to do them and the tactical things that you want to look for in your organization. Now, some of this is going to be relevant and some of it won't, but it'll give you an idea of where to look along your process. So with witty, we want to look at every time we're communicating. And when I mean every time, you saw that I posted a bathroom sign, right? I mean, every time we communicate, it's an opportunity to create an experience. And so think about that. You've got direct mail, you've got email, you've got your website, your mobile app, you've got signage at an event, you've got all sorts of things. I've walked into bathrooms before that have, mints and mouthwash, and you're like, OMG, that is exactly what I needed right now was mints and mouthwash. How did they know, right? And so you can have an experience in places that we don't necessarily think about as places where we're even looking for an experience. So anytime you're communicating, some of this again is a little bit more corporate, but I think you can play with this. Any sort of letters or emails, right? When somebody registers for your event, what happens next? Can we get excited? Like my son just got into college, and literally they sent him an email that's animated and has fireworks and stuff, right? Cool. Like celebrate. This is the same thing. I just signed up. I'm spending a lot of money to come to your event. Let's celebrate that moment together because we just decided. It's like we decided to get engaged, like it's a moment. Let's celebrate it. And so especially a welcome type letter is a great place to start and set the stage for how you're going to communicate with people. I've also seen lots of in-person signs, physical signs. Again, you need directional signs at any event. But those directional signs can do more than share directions. They can be fun. They can tell jokes. They can make people smile. They can be clever. And so, you know, if you're in my hometown of Chicago and you're at McCormick Place, which is like one of the largest conference centers in the world, have a joke on your sign about how far it is to walk to the next place, right? Everybody's already thinking it, and so put a joke on there about it and say, oh, hey, only a half a mile to go, whatever. But it's going to connect with people in a way that just an arrow saying, hey, this way for the breakouts doesn't do. Legal disclaimers and invoices may not necessarily be your bag depending on who you're talking to. But again, if you have to have legal disclaimers, later on, go to my website, danginges.com, and check out my privacy policy. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. But I wrote up my privacy policy to be fun to read. Now, I don't care if only 2 people all year long read my privacy policy, but the 2 that do are going to get an experience. And that's exactly what I want. That's what I mean by every single communication can have something. And then obviously social media is the place to go wild. Have fun in social media. People expect that. And so show some personality in social media. All right, so here's how I like to think about witty. And when we break up, at least one of the groups is going to be assigned witty. And the way that I like to think about it is by thinking about the teams in your organization. And if we can assign each team the opportunity to think about their own vertical, what are they in charge of? Well, I have a food and beverage team. Okay, that's one team. Or I have a ticketing team. That's another team. I have a social team. And ask them to think through their own process and only their own process of where they might be able to communicate in a more fun way. And then let's identify the channels that each one of those people communicate in, which may be the same channels and may be different channels. And then we come up with ideas. And you guys are going to do this. And what you're going to see really quickly is how easy it is to generate ideas, especially if you get a bunch of people together who maybe aren't in the same part of the organization. Grab the funniest person in the office, or grab the most creative person, grab the artist or the musician, and bring them to this conversation and just sit around and say, let's come up with some cool ideas. No bad ideas. And I'm going to tell you guys later, when we're generating ideas here, there's no bad ideas. What you want to be able to do is take an idea that might be a bad idea and add to it and change it and massage it, and then you end up with a great idea. All right, so that's witty. That's how we think about witty. With immersive, again, immersive is about creating experiences that people really feel in their bones. And so there's certain points in a journey that we want to look at. Transitions and handoffs are the most important. Let me give a corporate example for a moment, and then we can bring it to events. So let's say that you are in the market to buy windows for your home. And you interview a whole bunch of salespeople, and they come in, and they give you the prices, and they're all really expensive. Ultimately, you probably choose the windows. Nobody really wants the cheapest windows, because that you're going to end up paying for later. So one of the things that you end up choosing, one of the ways you end up choosing windows is, which salesperson did you like? Which one did you trust? Which one established a relationship with you? So you choose Steve, because Steve was the guy that you really liked. By the way, this is a true story. This happened to me. We picked the second most expensive windows because we liked Steve so much. Now, as soon as we signed the contract, Steve disappeared. Never heard from Steve again. So when we had problems with the installation of our windows, we wanted to call Steve. He was our buddy. He was the reason why we signed. No Steve. Steve's gone. Steve's handed me on to a different department that doesn't know who I am and that frankly doesn't care. And I end up with an absolutely horrific experience with Windows, and now will never recommend that brand to people. But I started by falling in love with Steve, right? Because Steve sold me on that company even though it was really expensive. So when we hand people from one part of our business to another, that handoff is sometimes slippery. And we need to make sure that it's clean. Because ultimately, the attendee doesn't care what department they're dealing with, right? The attendee is just, I'm an attendee of the Northwest Event Show. That is a brand to me. I don't care that I just went from the ticketing person over to the events experience person over to the renewal person. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It's all one. And I think we think of this as consumers that way as well. Also, immersive experiences, obviously highlighting the senses. I am going to figure out how to be one of the first speakers to bring scent into my talk. I really want to do that, right? I think that'd be so cool, like chocolate chip cookies wafting, or I was thinking maybe when I talk about the movie theater, if it suddenly started smelling like popcorn, wouldn't that be unbelievable? So scent is a great thing to play with. Sound, of course, is a great thing to play with. You know, obviously there's music everywhere, but you got to know your audience. Are you playing the right kind of music? Are you playing the kind of music that people, dance to and tap their feet to? I watched a lot of you when I was playing that hold music. I saw some feet tapping, right? So any one of the senses can make huge differences in terms of being immersive. Simplifying the complex. Every business has complexities, and we need to make sure that our customers, our attendees, don't see those complexities. For the attendee, it should be smooth as silk. Everything should be easy and fast, right? I loved when I checked in that all I had to do was put in my name and they knew me. Hey, fantastic. Super simple. Everything should be simple. So if there's something that takes multiple steps, find a way to reduce the steps. When I worked at Discover, one of the things we tried to do on the website was take things that took 3 clicks and bring it down to 2, and then bring it down to 1, and then see if we could deliver the same experience with 0 clicks, where the customer did not need to touch anything, but they got what they wanted anyway. And that's a killer experience. Consistency in the journey. This can be branding. Obviously, you look around here, all the colors are the same and the branding's fantastic. But it's also, again, how you communicate. If the first welcome email is super witty and like funny and then the rest of it's all really dull, it's going to be weird, right? We want consistency throughout. And then appealing to emotions as well. There's another story that I love to tell that I didn't get to tell this morning, that is about an experience in a hospital. And it's actually a very moving story, which is why audiences react to it. And so if we can take advantage of, not take advantage in a bad way, if we can leverage emotion, it's a great way. So things like celebrations, birthdays, accomplishments, your top salespeople, whatever it is that you're celebrating, those are great ways to bring some emotion into it. And so how do we look for immersive experiences? Here, instead of starting with the teams, I like to start with the moments. So let's find a moment in our journey, whatever it is. The moment might be person buys a ticket. That's a moment. And then we ask ourselves, what happened before that moment and what happens after that moment? And what does the current transition look like? Well, the current transition is I buy a ticket and I get an email. Okay, so that gives us a sense for where we might look to create something that's a little bit more immersive. I would argue that everybody expects an email. What if it was something different? What if we thought like Jesse and we said, whatever's normal, do the opposite? What if they got a phone call? What if they got a hot air balloon? Whatever. But let's think about what could be different. And then you also need to know what emotion that you're trying to evoke. And there are lots of different emotions. Now, generally, you don't want to evoke that little orange guy in the middle, the angry guy. That's not one we want to tend to focus on. But we might want to focus on happiness or joy or feeling cool or feeling relaxed. And occasionally, it may make sense to focus on something that's a little bit sad because that might work to our advantage in whatever the experience is that we're trying to create. Maybe you host events for a hospital system, and there's a lot of sad things that happen, and so we want to acknowledge it, and we want to draw people in, and then we want to party, whatever it is. But we want to know what emotions that we are trying to evoke. All right, so shareable. Shareable, there's lots of different ways. I have customer gifting here, but obviously your swag bags are an amazing part. I think one of the things I would highly recommend, and if there's any vendors in the room, I apologize in advance. I haven't seen yet your booths. I find that the vendor experience at most events, and I go to a ton of events, is almost always the same. And what I would say is not a single person that is attending your event needs another notebook or pen or even water bottle, although I thought the water bottles here were cool, okay? But the point is, it's very repetitive for people. And I've had people tell me stories about, yeah, I have an entire cabinet of water bottles that I've gotten from events, and nobody ever touches it. It's like, great. And I know so many of us are trying to be more sustainable as well. I was telling somebody earlier about a vendor that I went to at an event that had bought a real sheet of genuine dollar bills from the United States Treasury. And they had people they just handed you a scissors, and you could cut dollar bills off of this thing. They had a line at their booth. You know, like, whoa, that is super cool. I saw somebody last week, somebody had one of those, I don't know why it always comes down to money, but they had one of those things where you step in the thing and the bills all fly around, right? People come and they want to see that. They want to be involved in that. That's immersive and it's shareable. So I do think vendor experiences can be, and by the way, that's going to be great for your sponsors and your vendors as well, because you're going to get more people there. Surpassing expectations is a great way to create a shareable moment. Of course, you need to know what your customers' expectations are. And so if you haven't talked to your attendees or prospective attendees, figure out what their expectations are, and then you know what the baseline is, and we figure out how to exceed. Acts of kindness are always shareable moments. You've seen lots of people share, pictures on airplanes where the flight attendant writes a little note on a napkin to somebody and thanks them for their loyalty, or you get something on your pillow in the hotel, or somebody just sees that you're down and comes up to you and says, hey, is everything okay? Acts of kindness are things people talk about all the time, and obviously in our world, we need more of them. And then accomplishments, celebrating accomplishments together. This is not just our accomplishments. It is the accomplishments that our attendees and we have done together, because really what we're doing is celebrating them, not us. And so think about ways that we can say, hey, it's your 5th time coming to Northwest events show, right? Congratulations, and guess what? We have a special pin for people that have been here 5 times, whatever it is. But something where we're celebrating the attendee. So where do we look for shareable? Really, here it's a more basic question of just what do you want people to share? In a perfect world, if you could create the social media feed for your event, what would you want people sharing? I think that event, that one that I showed with me in front of the bold sign, I think they wanted people sharing that they were feeling bold. Bold was a theme of the event, right? And so they created different areas where you could sort of show that off. But if you start with what do we want people to share, then you design accordingly versus kind of waiting to see what it is that people are going to do. And then also, where do you want it shared? Downstairs, there was a board that they were putting together of people's challenges. That's a shareable opportunity. It's not social media. That's fine. So I want it shared at the event, or I want it shared in social, or I want it shared on our website. So where do we want people to share? We got to give them sort of, make sure that we are providing the type of experience that they can share in the place that we want. And then also, this is where responsive comes in, is when people share, how are we going to respond? Don't ask people to share and then ignore them. Make sure that you have a staffer that is watching social media that can engage. I love to post at events and use event hashtags. I'm always surprised when the event doesn't engage back. It's like one person that we need to do that, but it really continues the conversation. And all of the social channels love conversation. They want back and forth. And so you actually can help get your attendees' posts in front of more eyeballs. And finally, well, not finally because we're doing responsive, we also have opportunities to be extraordinary. I'm a Cubs fan, and our previous manager, Joe Madden, used to have a saying, do simple better. And in baseball, what he means is when you hit the ball, always run hard to first base. You got to make the simple plays in the field, which will allow us to occasionally make an error on the tough plays. We got to do the simple things right. And so this is true in events because there's so many details. And we got to do the simple details right. We can't screw up the simple stuff because the hard stuff, the complex stuff, our customers, our attendees, they're going to be more patient with us. They understand, right? But if I can't even register for the event, I don't have a lot of patience for that before I'm going and looking at some other event, right? So we got to do simple better. Changing the way things have always been done. When I was in corporate America for 20 years, if anyone on my team ever said, because we've always done it that way, I wanted to scream. That's the worst answer. Another terrible answer, because everybody does it this way. Those are not thinking differently like Jesse taught us. Those are not whatever's normal, do the opposite. So if you hear those things, or if you can identify those things, these are the opportunities. This is where you say, you know what? We have always given away this same thing in our swag bag for the last 15 years. Let's do something different this year. People are going to expect it, and then we're going to completely blow their minds. Eliminating key pain points. Almost every business has pain points. There's just parts that are annoying. And you can either give people death by 1,000 paper cuts, or you can start working on eliminating the paper cuts. And the thing is that people do have patience, but the patience runs out. And eventually, if things continue to not work, they get frustrated and they leave. We all do this with businesses, right? The first time we have a bad experience with a business, we're like, all right, didn't love that, but they fixed it. The second time, you're like, what is it with these people? The third time, you're like, I'm finding another cable company or whatever. I'm out. And so we want to eliminate as many key pain points as we can. Where do you find key pain points? From customer feedback, from attendee feedback, or walk the floor yourself, become a customer, always register for your own event using the same way that you ask attendees to do. And if it's a pain in the neck, if it's complicated, if it breaks, guess what? Other people are having problems with it too. And then offering proactive customer service. This is, to me, examples in the events industry are make it super easy for people to plug in their phones. Anticipating that people are going to need to plug in their phones after an entire day, especially when you want people sharing on social media, which sucks up battery, that's proactive. Don't make that hard for me. Make that super easy for me and visible for me. Proactively know when people get hungry and thirsty. Right? And that sometimes it's just between sessions. And yeah, I am running between sessions, but man, this is the moment I need that granola bar or the bottle of water or whatever it is. But be proactive about it, and people really appreciate that. And then, again, as you're looking through your own journey, find anything that you think is ordinary. Yeah, this is fine. We do it. It's great. But is it special? Is it something that people talk about? Is it something people remember? No. All right, let's sit down and talk about that moment and see if we can't take it from ordinary to extraordinary. Places to look. What parts of your current experience are boring or uneventful or meh or mid, as the teenagers now say? Ordinary, average, pick your word. Just find, and there's nothing wrong with it. Every organization, every event has parts of their experience that are okay, that are just kind of, we phone it in. But if you can sit down and come up with those, that's your list of places to start to go from ordinary to extraordinary. Can you find an example of an experience? Can you create an experience where one doesn't currently exist? This is the on hold example, right? Today, when you're on, most of the time when you're on hold, it's not an experience, and if anything, it's a bad experience. But if we can take someplace where you don't expect to have an experience, and all of a sudden there is an experience, super cool. Right? And so, again, we want to just think as creatively as we can up front. We can always call it down. We can always, and when we do this later, like, don't say, oh, no, I don't have the budget for that, or legal won't approve it, or whatever. We just want all the ideas on the table, and then later we can start to cut them. But it's really about just trying to think. It's a wish list. What is something you do because everyone else does it? I mean, we're in an industry, you all attend lots of other events. Probably a lot of the ideas that you come up with for your own event, where'd you find them? From another event, right? And that's okay if you're attending events maybe outside of your industry. But if you're attending events in your industry, what you don't want to do is look like every other event. That's going to be hard to get people to choose your event over others. And so ask yourself, what are we doing, honestly, because everyone else does it? And then on this one, I always like, and I think this is a great exercise too, if you go back and talk to your teams, just ask the question, what is your favorite brand and why? And the why part is critical. Now, lots of people are going to pick the same brands. You're going to pick Amazon, Disney, Starbucks, Nordstrom, Chewy, wonderful brands. Ask them why. And when you start to get the why people love these brands, by the way, other people will say my local hardware store, or my local hair salon, or some place that you've never heard of. Great. That's a fine answer as well. But the why will start to give you an idea. Why do they love Chewy so much? And how could Chewy possibly have anything to do with my business? Well, because Chewy has an amazing focus on customer experience and does things that no other e-commerce player does, let alone retailer. What if you, bless you, what if you took something that Chewy does and you brought it into your events? What if you brought dogs to your events? Oh, that would be awesome. Who doesn't love that? What if you partnered with the local humane society? I mean, these are where ideas come from. And sometimes a lot of companies, organizations come to me and they're just stuck. They're like, I don't know where to come up with an idea. How do I do this? And so when we try to think of what other brands do that we love and what is it about them, why do we love them? I love Southwest Airlines because their safety announcements are really funny. Awesome. Okay, we don't have safety announcements, but we have other announcements. And what if we can take a little bit of the spirit of, no pun intended, of Southwest and bring it into our announcements? So this is where I constantly find new ideas. All right, and finally, being responsive. I am going to give you a little example here because we didn't get to talk about it in the keynote. So this is a scene from This Is Us, the NBC show. And this episode ran right after the Super Bowl to record ratings. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but I will set this up for you. This is our main character, Jack. And he is a beloved main character. Everybody loves Jack. And something very, 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 very bad is about to happen to Jack. And the antagonist in this scene is the crock pot on the counter. Now, that's all you get in terms of the setup. Next day, and remember, this is right after the Super Bowl, record ratings. Next day, there are thousands and thousands of tweets aimed at the crock pot company. One of my favorite was from a woman named Kayla. And she says, "Thanks to This Is Us for breaking my heart every week. Additionally, I will no longer be making my crock pot chili after last night's episode." This is a bad day at Crockpot headquarters. And I can just imagine there's a PR team telling the social media team, don't answer. Whatever you do, it'll pass. One news cycle and everyone will forget about it. But the social media team ignored the PR team, and I'm so happy they did. And they responded to people like Kayla. And to Kayla, they said, "Kayla, we're heartbroken over last night's episode too, but we're innocent until proven guilty. Because for years we've been making quality and safe products. If you don't believe us, ask your parents." They could tell how old Kayla was. Brilliant answer. Kayla immediately writes back to Crockpot and says, "I apologize for what I said when I was in an emotional state. I could never live without my beloved Crockpot. Hashtag Crockpot is innocent." Unbelievable, right? Do you think Kayla expected Crockpot to respond? Heck no. And look at the love that she showed that brand when they did. And so again, bring it back to events. If people are sharing in social media about how much fun they're having at your event, join the conversation. Tell them you're so glad to have them there. Tell them that you're so, that you're excited that they're having fun. Just acknowledge them. Because after all, when we go back to Shareable, they're doing what we wanted them to do. They used our hashtag and everything, right? And so we want to be part of that conversation. So opportunities to be responsive. Obviously, social listening at events is going to be your number one. Being proactive can also be asking people. Ask people. Don't just survey them after the event. Ask them up ahead of time. What are you hoping for? What are you expecting to get out of this event? If you've got a team that's circulating around an event, ask people, how are you doing? How are you enjoying? What's your favorite part been so far? You are constantly collecting feedback, and this is going to be a way for you to respond. Oh, you can't find the bottles of water? Here, let me show you. I just solved a problem for you, right? That's being responsive. The result of being responsive is that we turn detractors into advocates. I saw this in social all the time, even in businesses that you think people love to hate. I worked in credit cards and health insurance, for crying out loud. People love to hate those two companies. And yet, we were able to get detractors in social media and turn them into advocates, not just neutral, advocates. People saying they loved the brand because we responded to them, because we engaged with them. And so to be responsive, we want to know what channels we're marketing in, because any channels that we are doing marketing is a channel in which someone can respond. You send me an unsolicited email to tell me about your event, I might hit reply. You post on my Facebook feed with a paid ad, I might comment on it. Anywhere you are trying to advertise or market, people can comment back. And so you have to be prepared to be responsive should they do that. By the way, people don't always respond with what you want them to respond or anything even related to what you're posting. And so we sometimes have to be ready for that. And then we want to figure out how we want to respond to complaints, compliments, and questions. We want to respond to everybody. I had such a crappy time at XYZ event because it was super cold and the food sucked. We still respond to that, okay? Because that's a real comment. It's not spam, it's not hate mail, it's actually somebody that had a bad experience. Let's talk to that person. We're so sorry that you had that experience. That's certainly not what we intended. We'd love to chat with you about it so that we can do better next year. And maybe we offer them a free ticket to next year, a discount or something like that. That person is not going to remain mad at us anymore because we've now responded and we've attempted to help. And then I want everybody to commit to responding to everyone. Trolls accepted. If somebody's trolling, if somebody's using hate language, if somebody's a spammer, you don't have to respond to them. Everybody else we have to respond to. All right, so what we're going to do now, this is the part where we're going to break up into groups. And what I'd like to do, ideally, we have 5 letters, so ideally we would have 10 groups, and we're going to have 2 groups do each letter. And you guys are going to have some time. Let me see how much time we have. We have about, correct me if I'm wrong, 23 minutes left, I think. Okay, awesome. You guys are going to have about 15 minutes to chat amongst yourselves. And I've got some handouts that review what I just talked about. So each one of your groups is going to, we'll just have you pick a letter because I've done this a lot of times and we're going to have all the letters occupied at some point. So I want you to pick a letter. I want you to talk with your group about generating ideas. You don't have to fill out everything on the form. The key is put down as many ideas in 15 minutes as you can. Put down every idea that comes to your mind, no matter how crazy, no matter how big, no matter how expensive, no matter how outside the box, just put it down. And what you're going to find is in 15 minutes, you're going to have an unbelievable list of ideas. And now imagine if you go back to your groups and you do this in a little bit more than 15 minutes. So this is not going to be easy, but let's try to turn around, create little pockets of groups, and I'm going to hand out a workbook, and you're going to vote on what letter you're going to talk about. You're going to take 15 minutes to talk about it, write it down, have one person write it down, and then we're going to invite one person in your group to come up to the microphone and share some ideas. All right. I know you'd like to spend the rest of the day doing this because this is super fun, but we only have a few more minutes left, and I want to get some of the groups to come share. So I did notice, I don't think I saw any responsives, but I did see some people did witty, some did immersive, some did shareable, some extraordinary. That's awesome. Let's see if this works. If we could get any volunteers who are willing to come and speak, we need them to come to this microphone. But I would love somebody to just come and say, here's a couple of ideas that we came up with in a mere 15 minutes. Anybody brave enough to do that? Yes, awesome. Come on over. You do have to come to the center. If there's another person, get in line behind him. That would be great. If we have like 3-4 people, we'll go through it. That would be amazing. And then I'm going to collect all of the lists of ideas, and we're going to put them into a bigger list for you.
Check, 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 check. Well, hello, my name's Jonathan West, Queen Anne Beer Hall, the Hall Group, Moss Bay Hall. So it was nice of a lot of people to come out last night. Of course, don't shy away from a microphone, so how about we do this? Had a great group over here with some great hotel professionals and other professionals here. Our biggest thing was shareables because, social media, it's not going away anytime soon, right? So one of our big things was that we looked at and what did we feel like we wanted to share? Being a friend, being authentic, being real with people. We talked in our group about how, different generations go with different type of conversing and interacting styles. Now, if you grew up watching videos a whole bunch, then we're going to tailor videos to being a friend or showing off pets. It's hitting the heartstrings, hitting the human condition there. But we know, and what we agreed in our group is that, for the most part, is that being in person matters. personal interaction matters here. And so being able to bridge that gap, being organic and authentic with our videos and experiences, sharing recipes, having a more interactive type of newsletter is something that's really more engaging than just getting a newsletter email that you're probably just going to thumb through or not even open the email every month. And live first. Someone in our group talked about it. Don't make everything just for the gram. Live first, shoot for now, and then, hey, if you can make it nice and shiny on the back end, do that. But you lose a little authenticity if you're always shooting for the gram, right? Where do we want it shared? Word of mouth, social media, newsletters. What tools would we provide and encourage? We love sharing our animals. We love real life moments. Like gamify things, like the Ice Bucket Challenge. What social trends are going on right now? Personalize and make things your own, and create a personalized takeaway from what you're sharing. And that's it. We're on to the next.
Awesome. One thing that you guys do, because I did it last night, is you're connected to Untapped. And I checked in on Untapped, and I don't know if you guys noticed on the screens, but when people leave feedback about the beers, it's scrolling across the screen. So that encourages, without saying, please check in on Untapped and don't forget to check in at our place and blah, blah, blah. It's showing people, you're highlighting different people's comments on the board. And so people intuitively, they're like, cool, I want my face on the board. I'm going to go do this, right? So I thought that was really cool. Awesome. Well done on Shareable. Go ahead.
Hey, my name's Mo. I'm with a company called I Love It When, and I got to sit with these lovely people from a variety of companies, and we had immersive, and I love immersive. I do a lot of retreats for companies, and so one of the things we talked about is we made up an event, a general meeting for a company, and what is something that you could do when you send out the invite. You could invite people, you could actually buddy people up and have them meet for 30 minutes before the meeting sometime, so to get to know someone in a completely different department on a different level. And then the next moment was when you actually enter the meeting. One of the things I really love to do is get people very present and in the moment, because our minds are always going all over the place. And so I shared with them an exercise that I have people do. I'm also an energy healer, and so I work a lot with energy. And I have people pair up about 2 feet apart from each other. I put on some meditation music, and then you look into their left eye for 3 minutes. And it's a very vulnerable exercise, but it helps people to drop everything that's going on in the moment outside of that room and brings them into the moment, so they can actually be very into the conversation in a whole different way. It changes the energy in the room in a really great way. We also talked about coming into the meeting and having, like, she had suggested little tables set up so that you could go meet your coffee buddy again in person. And then after, or like during the goal of the meeting was a moment that we had written down, have communication from the leader or whomever about what was the goal, what was the intention behind the meeting, so they can go into that moment and be prepared to share. Those are some of the things.
Great stuff, great stuff. All right, do we have any witties or extraordinaries? Awesome. Fantastic, I could tell.
Okay, I'm really not good at this, so bear with me. Hi, Jana. I'm Davey. I'm with Foods Catering here in Seattle. And our group back here was great. We were made up of luxury portable bathrooms, DMC with customer service, catering, nursery and plants, and wine in Walla Walla. So I think we should all go wine tasting. Anyways, we chose witty, and a couple of things that we talked about is how to respond on email. So, for example, when we finally get that contract, instead of just sending the email, thank you for the contract, we look forward to working with you, what if we did a video of ourselves thanking them in person, sending the video of ourselves, thank you, we're so excited to work with you, we can pop a little, one of those little confetti sticks or something. And so they're actually putting a name with a face and having a little bit more of an experience and with you personally. Another creative, witty idea was, again, being witty with signage. So, for example, the wine tour, is it Daron? Did I pronounce that right? There's a wine. They're having an event with Daron. So we were just talking about having signage on the ground saying like Rhone this way instead of, and a riff off the Daron wine and other signage pertaining to wine in that way. Lots of fun, witty ideas with luxury restrooms. Lighting them up from underneath, wrapping signage in them, decorating them to theme. I know we personally just did a Barbie event a while back, and we had luxury restrooms, and one of them was Kingdom, and one of them was Barbie Land. So whichever restroom you chose to walk into, you got the whole experience of the theme of the event. And Nursery and Plants, they're doing something really fun. So you know how every week you kind of get that, if you're in the nursery plant industry, if you're in catering, we'll get something from like US Foods, for example, every week giving you the weekly sales or the weekly, fresh list. Well, in nursery, they do the same thing. They do a weekly newsletter. And someone on their team decided to come up with something fun where in the subject line, it's a joke. So now every week you get a joke. So to lead with humor and initiate humor first. And so you're not just always getting the same boring newsletter. And they said that their response to that has been really well received. And people look forward now to getting the weekly nursery letter. So just some little witty things.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, I have an entire blog on bathroom experiences. I love bathroom experiences because they're so unexpected. And so, by definition, you kind of go in and you're not expecting anything. So anything that happens can be really, really fun. And so there, again, the message I want you to leave with, a couple of them. First of all, experiences can happen anywhere, anywhere. And if you think through your experience in its entirety, you will come up with places where you don't have an experience, but you could. Also, none of the ideas that I heard here today were super expensive. None of them were particularly operationally complex. I didn't hear about a whole lot of technology. What we really need is a brand new AI-based mobile app that does X, Y, Z. No, nobody said that. These are all very practical ideas that we can go implement that don't cost a lot of money. And I'm a big believer that customer experience, attendee experience, it is about all of the little things. And those things add up to people. The good and the bad, they add up. And so don't worry about Beyonce and fireworks. That's too big. But worry about all the little things and figure out how all of those little things can be great little things. And then people leave with a smile on their face. In fact, they have a smile on their face the whole time they're there, which is exactly what we're looking for. If you could, please leave your papers on the desk. I'm going to collect all of the ideas and figure out a way for NWES to get them back to you. Thank you so much for participating. I'll be available in the hall and also downstairs signing books. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Everyone, one more huge round of applause for Dan Gingiss. If you are going to be sticking around, later on this afternoon, we have 11:40 is our next session up in the room. So please come on back here. We'd love to see you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.